Okay, let's start where she ended. Some people ain't me, right? I think one of the things when I deal with curiosity is this idea that we settle for an image of ourselves that we have bought up to this point. Every single person in this room has created an image of themselves that they have bought into. And I want to say you've created the image of yourself that you are now buying into. And what I love about this character, Mama Rose, is that she just knows. She knows there's something more. She's not just curious, she is curiosity activated, knowing that there's something more. And I want to say that by the time you leave here today, I would like you to have gotten rid of all of your preconceived ideas of who you think you are and get in touch with all of those things that you can be. Anybody want that? Yeah. Everybody got so quiet, you're like... So let's start at the top. I love this. She says this is what she says right before the song. She's talking to her dad, and she's asking him for money. She needs money to go buy costumes and sets and do this whole show, she says, for her daughters. Now, the interesting thing about Rose is that Rose is trying to make happen for her children what never happened for herself. Frank Rich of the New York Times said that Gypsy is really musical theater's version of King Lear. And it makes sense. There are many critics that believe that Gypsy is the greatest musical ever written. And I'm one of the people that think it certainly ranks up there in the top 5. So we're looking at this woman who's trying desperately to make happen for her children what didn't happen for her. And I just want to bring it back to myself and to all of you. What are you still not letting happen for you that's showing up in other ways in your life as discontent? We call it divine discontent, and it should be divine discontent because it's divine, because when you are discontented, it's something in you that knows you're not being equal to what you're equal to. So we say divine discontent, nothing wrong with it. If you're divinely discontented, good. Notice it, and notice that because you're divinely discontented, the universe is shouting out to you saying, hey, there's a bigger world for you to live in. Get out of the house. The proverbial house of your mind. So she says this to her father. She says, anybody who stays home is dead. If I die, it won't be from sitting. And then she starts to sing. But I love this. She says, anybody who stays home is dead. If I die. She's not even convinced she's ever going to die. If I die, it won't be from sitting. So, when you're going to start with that, where are you going to go? So she says, when I think of all those sights that I got to see yet, all the places I got to go, all the things that I got to be yet, what about you? What are all the places you still have to see? What about all the places you have to go? What about all the things that you still have to do? What about all the imagination in your mind that is longing for itself to come out? How do we do that? How do we tap into that? How do we not deny the beautiful lives we're living? Because let me tell you, I stand here living a beautiful life. I love my husband, I love my children, I love my home, I love my friends, I love my church. I have an amazing life. And yet, there is still divine discontent that says there's more. There's got to be more. Preparing for this talk, I went back to, Jimmy Mellon sitting up in the top rafters of the Forest Theater looking down on something that looked like it was just, I want that. I didn't have that. So here I am in the balcony, and here's what I want. How am I getting there? How do you close that chasm? Well, I'll tell you how you get there. The same way you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice. What I didn't realize then is that it was spiritual practice. But I knew innately at that time what needed to be done. So you look at this, here you are, this is you. Here's you with your divine discontent. Here's out here what's waiting for you. How do you manifest that? It's all in the mind. Ernest Holmes wrote a brilliant book to teach us that anything we want, we can receive, we can live if we are willing to be equal to it. And that equality comes in mind. Meaning, if you look at something that feels like this is for me, this is what I want to do, you must become equal to it in order for it to merge with you. Got it? So there I am at 18 years old, and I am up in the rafters with my dreams, and there's what I want way down there. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, because I didn't know what I shouldn't know back then. I just knew that's mine. That is mine. You know, when she sings in the song, "Some People Ain't Me," basically this whole song is a song teaching race consciousness. Some people do this, some people do that, some people do this, some people do that, and most of us believe if some people do it, and if all people do it, this must be what gets done. We buy it, done, and now we're doing the same thing they're doing. And we're one of the some people. And yet, religious science says, no, you don't have to be that person. You don't have to be the person sitting at home on their butts. You can have the dreams and the guts. And I will get to guts, what I consider guts. So, I had a dream. I had a dream. I had a dream. So how was I going to make that dream happen? Well, it's pretty interesting that, you know, as I was putting this talk together, I was blowing my own mind. I was like, oh my God, that's how that happens. So here I am up in the balcony. There's what I want. Fast forward 10 years later. 10 years later, I'd already starred on Broadway. But I was back at the Forest Theater. And I was one of the stars of that show. And I remember the day we walked into the Forest Theater. We'd been on tour all year. This was going to be my last stop because I chose to end my contract after Philadelphia. I remember walking into, first of all, I remember getting out of the car in front of the Forest Theater. My aunt had dropped me off for the first, when we put the show together, the tech. And I got out of the car, and they had put me, a huge picture of me jumping off of the dime in front of the Forest Theater. It was just this huge picture of me. And I remember getting out of the car going, wow, here he is up here in the balcony. There's my dream. 10 years later, I'm the star standing on that stage. How did it happen? I'll tell you how it happened. I didn't have in my head at that age that there was any reason why I couldn't. I didn't understand race consciousness. Even when my family would say, when I said I'm moving to New York, they were like, why? You know how many people try to move to New York? You know how many people audition for Broadway shows? I'm like, yeah, I know, because I've already done it a couple times, and there are thousands. I get that. Thousands in line. In those days, the open calls, you couldn't get into an open call. You had to wait 3 days to make it through the thousands of people, right, Karen? Yes. So I understood that, but I didn't understand the word. What word did I not understand? No, and can't. I didn't understand that. But years later, through a lot of race thought and race consciousness, the mind picks up all of this stuff and starts thinking it's real. I am here today to tell you, it's not real. Whatever you're thinking in your mind is real and can stop you from the dream you want. You need to eradicate that. Get back to that 19-year-old boy sitting in the balcony saying, that's mine, and nothing's going to tell me it's not. So there I stood on the stage, and I remember the very first night, all the critics, my family, everybody's sitting out there, and I am standing on a giant dime in a green sequined outfit with 42nd Street. Yeah, really, I should have told you that. 42nd Street. Hamilton. Hamlet. No. So I'm standing on this big dime, and there's, 40 girls and boys behind me, all tap dancing away, but I am center stage in all the spotlights. And I remember that night, literally thinking to myself, looking up to that balcony and thinking, who's out there? Who's out there pointing to me saying, oh, and this is the other story. The boy who played Tulsa in Gypsy, 10 years previously, was the boy who stood on the stage in New York with me, and it was between the two of us to get this role. And I stood there at that audition just thinking, first I was shocked that it kept getting, I wasn't shocked that I was going to get it, but I was shocked that when it got down to the two of us, here's the guy that started me, who I was like, I want that. And that day I was like, I'm getting that. And when they picked me and they said, we need you to go into, it was Boston at the time, we need you to go to Boston in the next 24 hours, he was waiting in the wings. He just gave me a big hug. He said, you're incredible. And then I told him the story. I said, well, I'm standing here because I watched you do it 10 years ago. He says, well, it's yours now. So what's in your mind that you have pointed at for far too long? And it could be an old dream that you have somehow buried deep inside of you because the naysayers along the way talked you out of it. What is yours to live? Because I believe that every single person on this planet has something in them, authentic to them, that is theirs to do, theirs to be. So, the people that played this role, just think about it. Ethel Merman, Angela Lansbury, Tyne Daly. We're kind of looking at very similar people. Ethel Merman, the loudest voice in history, right? Literally, Ethel Merman was someone you could not stop, unstoppable. Tyne Daly, who had no business being in a musical, and yet she won the Tony that year for giving one of the most amazing performances ever. She just opened her mouth and sang it. And who can ever forget her in the middle of Rose's Turn, literally looking like she was giving birth, squatting, hitting the ground and getting back up without missing a beat or a note. No one, I had never seen anything like that up to that point. Even Patti LuPone, who could sing and cry, I never saw her squat. Ethel Merman, Angela Lansbury, Tyne Daly, Bette Midler, and then Bernadette Peters. Bernadette did it on Broadway, and Frank Rich in the Times said in her entire career she'd never given such a nuanced, layered, deep performance, and unlike any other Merman before her, she had reinvented the role to fit her. And finally, we had a gypsy on Broadway, a Mama Rose on Broadway, who you could point to and say, there's the woman that should have been a star and wasn't, so she was taking it out on her children. The only one out of all of them, I believe, that I saw, there's the star. As she left that stage on the last moment of her performance, Sam Mendes, the director, did a brilliant thing. She walked up on stage and he let these notes go out. I had a dream, and Bernadette turned, tears coming down her face, looking at the stage, and you got it. She did not live her dream. And then as she walked out the door, I almost couldn't get up out of my seat after that performance. I was like, that's what that's about. That's what happens when we don't live our dream. We project it on other people. We blame other people for what we didn't accomplish, for what we didn't do. It's all their fault. They made me not do this. Well, I got to tell you, as you sit here today, it's no one's fault but the person in the mind that has the dream. Because everything you need to succeed with that dream is fully orbed, right there, ready for you. The title of my talk today is Sing Out, Louise. The first line in the show, she walks down the aisle and she's like, sing out, Louise. I have a very funny story of my daughter Nora. When I put together Yo-Ho-Ho, A Pirate's Christmas, and I cast her in the lead, she hadn't done anything yet, any show yet. So she was sitting on stage and she's singing her first song really softly, and I, from the back of the theater, without noting it, I went, sing out, Nora, sing out. And I was standing next to Reverend Jonathan, and he went, oh my God. He said, you are turning into Mama Rose. Now, as much as now I can go like, oh my God, that's horrifying, I remember in the moment I went, someone has to do it. And I went down the road and I was like, Nora, you've got to sing out. You've got to let it out. You've got to just, don't care how good it is. Don't care how bad it is. Just sing it out. And she was so mad at me. First of all, because I was doing it in front of people. I had to point out to her, director, actress, this is what we do. This is not your dad anymore. Sing out. And I go back up, and oh my God, this little girl who had this sweet little voice started singing with such anger, which was totally wrong for the character, but she got that voice out. So why I came up with this title was, there is something inside of you. There is a Mama Rose inside of you. Let's call her God. And that voice inside of you is saying, sing out, Deanna. Sing out. Are you going to listen to it or not? Are you going to blame it for telling you to do something? Or are you going to get in line with your inner Mama Rose and start listening and actually do what is yours to do? This has to be the gayest talk I've ever given. And I used to make fun of ministers that did the Wizard of Oz talk. I was like, I'm not doing a Wizard of Oz talk. It's just so gay. Apparently, this tops it. So, it's my inner monologue just coming out. So really, there is a voice inside of you, and I just want you to pay some attention to it. I just want you to pay attention to it and not all of the would-be directors that are telling you how it should be done. Do you know that most directors tell you how they would do it? Arthur Lawrence, who directed, which version was it? Patti LuPone, who's the last one who did it on Broadway. When he directed Patti LuPone, he had a lot of trouble with Patti LuPone. He had a lot of trouble with the cast, the whole cast. And I just read this online. Until the day he walked in and he says, you know what? I'm trying to give you what I know of this character and what I know of these parts. I'm trying to tell you how it's been done before. I've directed it tons of times before. I'm trying to tell. Today, I'm stepping back. You show me what's coming through you. And it was a very different Gypsy. I think most of us are still living in a life that has been directed by someone other than ourselves. When are you going to take over directing your own life and not becoming a revival of the old life, but an authentic, brand new, interesting, exciting musical? Because everyone's life is a musical. I am certain of that. So today is the day. I have this great quote. Thomas Hobbes, 15th century philosopher, he said this. He said, curiosity is the lust of the mind. Isn't that cool? Curiosity is the lust of the mind. And lust, just in case you're going in the wrong direction with this, lust is an intense longing. When you allow your mind to be curious, you will tap into that intense longing inside of you that wants you to sing out. So, when was the last time you felt lusty? All right, before that. When's the last time you really felt lusty about your life? When you really felt this desire, this longing to be more than you currently perhaps think you are? So, desires. I'm going to ask you to do this going forward. Allow them passage. Allow this thing in you passage. Don't shut it down. Don't say, oh, I'm not that. That's not me. Don't shut it down. If you have heard it, it's come to you for a reason. I say, whoever's talking, God is speaking. No matter what it is, no matter who it is, whatever comes through you, allow it to come through. Then, logically, pay attention to it. Talk about it in your mind. Don't talk about it to all your friends, because they're all going to tell you what they're used to telling you about who you used to be. So let it come through you. Allow it through. And then pay some attention to it. Make logical sense out of it, and then use some spiritual logic. And then, here's the last one, follow through. Because a lot of people sit on their butts. They've got the dreams, yeah, but not the guts. And guts is when you know who you are. Because when you know who you are, you've got the guts to do anything. Because anything is yours to do. Everything is yours to do. So, I'm glad you all have dreams, and I know you all have dreams. Let them come through, but you've also got the guts to make them come true. So let's start today. Let's be curious about everything, and then once it comes through, take the guts and find out what is mine to do in this, and then Do it now. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.